Hello and welcome to Dungeoneered, a podcast dedicated to discussing Dungeons and Dragons. I'm Aaron.
And I'm Josh.
Let's do this. So Josh, for this week's Lukewarm Open, I wanted to talk about the big giant block of text that I sent you today, because we talked a little bit about debating.
Do you want me to read it again?
No, 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 I don't. No, I do not want you to read it in your voice that is
Dramatized voice.
Dramatized. No, but we were kind of talking about last week after our podcast recordings, we ended up staying up way too late several different times, sending pictures of random animals.
Yep.
Fantasy animals? Is that how you would describe them?
I would say animals that are dressed as fantasy characters with like little weapons and things, and a lot of them are like riding on birds and things.
Yeah, and so like how it kind of started was a picture of a mouse riding a finch, and it was like finch night. And so we kind of started workshopping a little bit of a different world, and I decided that I wanted to make this a little bit more of a reality in my mind and in my writing space, because I do a lot of writing. And so I started kind of workshopping some different ideas, and I wanted to run some of them by Josh and get his kind of opinions on them. So,
and part of the like problems we're running into, your write-up brings them to the forefront in an interesting way.
Yes.
And I appreciate that.
Yeah. So what we kind of ended up talking about through all these picture sending sessions is sentient animals in a world who essentially take on the role of humans. So, creating civilizations, cultures, art, you name it, right? So they kind of just take on the role of a human that we would in today's world. And we were battling with the idea of sentient versus non-sentient animals, and which animals are sentient versus which animals are not sentient.
Yeah.
And Josh, correct me if I'm wrong, you wanted certain animals to be sentient while other animals are not. So like a deer is not sentient, but all mice are sentient.
Yeah.
Or rats aren't sentient,
I was
but
thinking
all frogs
as
are
long
sentient.
as you make it like consistent throughout, like bears are not sentient, mice are, rats are sentient, but like a polar bear or like a penguin isn't.
Right. And so
Actually, I would want penguins to be sentient in this world, but
of course.
all in all,
absolutely.
like I was just thinking that there should be a clear line, and then with more images that were sent between us, you were like, oh, but I really like the idea of like that fox being sentient, but then in this one having this fox being like this, what we think of as an animal fox, that it's not sentient. They have their own independence, but there's like a lacking of certain sentient qualities.
It would be like you saw a fox in the wild, in today's world, you know.
But you're like,
not that we don't know in today's world if all animals are actually sentient and are plotting against us.
It's true.
They could be. You could have an army of mice in your wall right now, Josh, and they are going to come and attack you in the middle of the night.
Oh, I know I do. They are there. Yeah. I've made friends with some of them, so when they take over the world, I'm going to be okay.
Is there a Marcus in there somewhere?
I don't know the reference.
There wasn't a reference.
Oh.
It's just a name. It was just a name.
Sure, I'll make it a reference. Yeah, there's a Marcus Phoenix in there.
Okay, no, stop. No,
They're going
we went too far.
Going full Gears of War on us. They got little guns with the chainsaws on the bottom of them. It's going to be brutal, man.
Carmichael is a Gears of War character, right?
Yep.
He's my favorite character in Gears of War. Rest in pieces.
We all know the best one. The best one is the Coltrane.
Oh,
he was an ex-football player.
Yeah, dude, that guy saws like nobody's business.
Yeah, Augustus Cole.
Oh
dang
boy.
it.
Anyway,
now we're gonna have to do a topic on Gears of War at one of these points.
Dude, Gears of War is really fun. I had a lot of good memories in Gears of War with my friends playing that endless horde mode where like enemies would just come running at you and you just have to kill them all. Really fun stuff. But anyways,
damn, hold on.
What?
I'm looking at the like I just pulled up Augustus Cole's like wiki page. Normally like there's like I don't know 10 like little like headings of new sections for an article of like a write up on these things. There are So
Oh, it's a
freaking many.
huge. It is a
1, 2,
huge
3,
wiki
4,
page.
5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17,
The
18,
okay,
19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28,
there's
29,
a lot.
30, 31, 32, 33, 34, 35, 36, 37,
You know,
38, 39, 40, 41, 42, 43, 44, 45, 46, 47, 48, 49, 50, 51, 52, and I'm not even done through the history
yeah.
yet. 53,
I'll tell you
54,
what. For
55,
reference for
56,
everybody,
57,
when you
58,
normally go on a
59,
Wikipedia page,
60,
it is the amount, the
56,
contents
57,
list
58,
for Augustus
69,
Cole is longer than most people's
70,
Wikipedia pages.
Yes, 100%. 72, 73, 74, 75,
So
76,
huge.
77, 78, 79, 80,
Oh,
81, 82,
the bar
83,
is so
84,
small.
85, 86, 87, 88, 89, 90, 91, 92, 93, 94, 95. There's 95 headings
There's
on this article. Oh my
this is
goodness.
this is a freaking thesis.
Yeah,
This
that's
is
insanity.
huge.
And is all that from the games?
I think is he yeah, it's got to be early life, the
Gears
Locust
of War.
Wars.
No, the
Yeah.
appearances are Gears of War, Gears Tactics. No, I think these are books. One's called Midnight. It's a
I don't
comic
know.
series.
Well, I guess we have a new world to dive into.
Fields is a book series. Yeah, so there's comics, there's books, there's the video games, there's
This is
wow.
wild. Coal train, baby.
Goodness.
Hop on that coal train.
I mean, I'm yeah. Yeah, golly. Yeah, that's
But
so
anyways,
much. I did not
we
expect Gears lore to be that deep.
no.
That's
Well, we're gonna have to look into
wild to
Gears
me.
lore now.
Yeah, we
Um,
are.
But I wanted to run by the ideas that I proposed to you for animal sentience in this
Yes.
little kind of blurbs. So, I kind of proposed the idea in these blurbs that there's three different types of animals in this world: sentient animals, which take the place of humans, what are called the ravenous or ravenous ones, which are sentient animals who have lost their sentience and become feral, and then wildlings, which are non-sentient animals, just wild animals
Mhm.
that you can encounter in everyday life. And the idea behind this is there's not really an understood idea of what sentience is in this animal world.
Mhm.
And a lot of effort has been put forward by many in academia, in animal academia. It sounds so funny, but animal academia, to discover what the sentience is for animals. Actually, very similar to humans, I guess, because we still don't really know too much about that, anyways. But
It's true.
in consciousness. So my idea is I had a thought of a big bad evil guy who has learned how to remove sentience from animals, or has learned to manipulate like a plague that removes
That's who
sentience
the
from
big bad evil
animals.
guy in this world's gonna be.
Yeah, yeah. And so he is creating a group of ravenous ones that can destroy the world in some way or shape or form.
Mhm.
And my thought behind it is if I wanted him to have some sort of motivation, would be to like return the world back to being wild. So in his mind, there's no difference between a feral, non-sentient animal and a wildling. So just a wild animal. And so he wanted to return the world back to its former
What does he get
wild
from that?
state. That is a great question. I don't know. I haven't put too much thought into it.
Yeah.
It was just my my late night ramblings on a computer.
Mhm.
So
I mean,
I
that's an
guess, I
interesting
don't know.
idea. I would need a really good explanation on why he'd want that, because it would be hurting himself in terms of he's sentient.
Yeah. I think there'd be my mind goes to a couple places. First, if he could try and rule over these wild and feral creatures, giving himself more power or more control. That
Honestly,
seems a little, yeah.
where my mind went was he had a family. The family got slaughtered in like just one of the wars that happened in this world, and he's like, "Fine, if you want to be feral, I'll make you feral." Like he thinks that the society as it is now is
Is
feral,
feral.
but for like unfair reasons, where innocent are being slaughtered.
Yeah, so I can show you what feral really looks like.
Yeah, I'll make the world feral once more, and then like yeah, that's
Hmm.
where my brain went.
I like the idea of like he believes the world is feral, and so I'll show you what feral actually looks like. And
Hmm.
he created this weird group of people. I want part of me wants the ravenous ones or the ravenous to be a part of the world before this person existed,
Oh,
and
definitely. I
he
100%
learned to
think that they do
manipulate it.
exist. Because I like specifically in your write up you said, um,
Hmm.
however, not all animals are sentient, and some fall into rabid behaviors known as the
Right.
ravenous. These once sentient beings have lost all cognition and have become feral. So I think that
Yep.
this is like something that can happen, and this is just the first person who found out how it happens. So he like takes people and like tortures them or whatever to get the conditions to become ravenous and turns people ravenous. And I think that's also to
Yeah.
have some a lot of fun like quote unquote horror moments of
Yeah.
once sentient friends
Yep.
now
Yep.
ravenous,
Or
like
now
almost turning them into
ravenous.
zombies.
Yeah, yeah. My question is, do I want this individual to know how people become ravenous and know how to manipulate it, or does he just take advantage of like a plague that's causing this ravenous outbreak, like rabies? You know what I'm saying?
I would say, do you think it is a one-way trip?
What do you mean? You said one-way
When,
trip?
yeah, when you become ravenous, can you ever become unravenous?
I don't think so. I don't think so.
I agree with that. I agree. I think that once you become it, you can't. So I think he just knows what the trigger events are, or how to reach the trigger events.
Okay, and so then you, as a world builder, what do you think these would be? What would we think?
I think it's just like a mental
A
break.
mental
I think
break?
even humans have mental breaks. I think you just have to get them to a mental break, whether it's overexhaustion.
Boy, there's so much political and social problems you could weave into this story if
Uh
you
huh.
really wanted to.
100%.
If you really wanted to, if that's how people become rabid, if they have like mental breaks, you could
Yeah,
really weave some
and
serious.
I think the way he gets it to happen is he tortures them.
Oh gosh,
But like you never show it because I don't know exactly
no,
what
no,
the
no.
audience is for this. If it's gonna be like
I haven't decided.
adult or like maybe a young adult, but like don't
Yeah,
have like I would imply the interrogations,
yeah,
but I
yeah.
would not show them because I would imagine this would be for young adult readers to slightly a little older.
Yeah. A part of me, part of the reason why I wanted to create a different world is because I wanted to shift my audience a little bit because the world that I have right now, that I've created since I was really young, is extremely brutal.
Hmm.
So like, it's really brutal. So I wanted to make something a little bit more wholesome. Although seeking nothing but the flesh of their sentient counterparts is a little not wholesome, but
There's something about it being animals
hmm
that feels a little more like quote unquote acceptable.
yeah,
Like the idea of them wanting to eat other animals
exactly.
is not as zombie like, but as like,
Yeah.
oh, that's just how animals in our world currently act.
Yep, exactly, exactly. Lions eat zebras, that
Yeah.
type of thing is kind of. And then
So I think it's
um,
creepy in like the idea of it, but
yeah,
in like just for people looking at the story, it doesn't
yeah.
appear as evil.
And then finally, too, I wanted, before we end, because we're going to get
Yeah.
really long, but before we ended, I wanted to talk about wildlings, which are just wild animals. And how do you think sentience would come about in this way? Obviously, I mentioned parents. If you're born to sentient parents, then you are sentient. If you're born to wildling parents, then you're a wildling.
Hmm.
So what do you think? How did this start?
I would say
How?
I would do the certain animals can never be sentient. Certain animals are
You would do
always
that?
wildlings. I think that would be how I would do that, and it would be size based because I kind of like the idea of it being a smaller world.
Yeah, yeah.
So I
So
would make
my thoughts.
bears and deer
Hmm.
and mooses and or sorry meese and
Meese, yes.
and like octopi and stuff like that are
Yeah,
all like always sharks always
right. And
or
that's
or
kind of why
maybe
I.
maybe this is a fun thing to explore. Maybe they are sentient. They just don't
Have sentience
they
yet?
have their
Like the
own
will to.
civilization that like the other world doesn't even see because they're so small. So like they don't
Hmm.
they like maybe it's not until like book 3 that they like actually end up having a conversation with one of these like bears or one of these massive creatures because everybody in the world just always scared of them,
Hmm.
so they never
That
talked.
could be a really interesting political and social dynamic as well. To be honest, you could
hundred
really
percent.
put
And so
real life into
it's
that.
like the cultural idea of these people being scary
Hmm.
is not necessarily the
Yeah.
truth. Like playing on that type of
Yeah,
an
they're
idea.
different, therefore they're scary and they're not sentient.
Yeah.
There's potential.
I
There's
really like that one.
potential.
And maybe like yeah, I don't know.
And
I
that's
was
why
because I the way we've kind of looked at the other sentient beings that they're almost well, at least we're
yeah.
anthropomorphizing them, like making them like hold
Yep.
bows and things like that. So maybe they are a little bit more anthropomorphic than the traditional idea of
Yep.
these animals, like an actual animal versus not. Because like a lot of them are probably going to
Yep.
stand on their
Yep.
two
Absolutely.
feet and so on that can't
Yeah.
actually do that.
Could you imagine?
So what if these wildlings are they're not
Yeah.
like that and they are on four
But they are
legs and
still
they don't
sentient.
wear armor and so they just yeah, but they're still
Mm.
sentient and people just they just came to imagine like oh they're brutal they're these
Yeah.
savages.
And it would make the push for because I have in this world that some wildlings have been domesticated and used as like pets or livestock or tools of war. It'd
Yeah.
make that push to make them not essentially slaves to be a
Mm-hmm.
very interesting talking point as well. So yeah, I don't know. I think this world has a lot of potential. I really, really, really like it actually so far. I mean, I have it's very bare bones right now. Obviously, I've written like 5 paragraphs about it,
Mm-hmm.
but I think this is a pretty solid little start. In we were playing around with the idea. Just I guess spoilers for a few next episodes of actually making this part of a world that we create in our
Yeah.
podcast. So might be fun to dive really deep into one singular world for an extra long season instead of doing short seasons. So um,
Yeah. And I'd be good with that doing that next
yeah,
season. That would
yeah.
be
So
100%
cool.
cool.
All right. Well, let's move on to the topic.
Yes. Well, I will say we're not going to be done with this topic by the end of this
Good,
talk.
good, good. I love it.
Much like that Augustus Cole Wikipedia
Yeah, you
article
ramble too much.
that we
That's the
got
problem. That's the problem. I never ramble ever.
to. Never, not once. You have this fine written 15-minute topic
Exactly.
you speak
Exactly.
on, and you're
Yes.
done. As soon as 15 minutes is
Yep.
up,
Yeah.
you're
Look,
done.
we made it to
Yeah.
18. Okay. Well, 19. We're close. All right. We're close. I was only 4 minutes over. Okay.
But so all in all, in my research, too many interesting things happened in the history of this city that like I didn't even get to the part where Hlondeth is controlled by the Yuan-ti. So we're gonna talk about the same city that we talked about last week,
Eh,
and we're just gonna go dive into the
Let's do it.
history
Yeah.
of it
Absolutely. Let's do it.
and how it established itself as an important part of the trade of the region, and in doing so grew quite wealthy and powerful. Hlondeth was established as an important port at the end of something called the Termway. The Termway was a road that stretched from Alaghan, the capital of Termish, to Hlondeth. 75 years after its establishment, the trade route known as Pikeman's Folly was built and connected the new city of Ormoth to Hlondeth, opening up trade from Hlondeth to what's called the Shining Plains.
Is it just me, or is there a lot of places called Blank Folly, like Blank's Folly in D&D?
Yes. I think it has. I think it has like a. Well, I think it's not just in D&D. I think in real life. I think it. I think there's like a reason for that. Like it's a. But I always forget what folly actually was meant in those terms.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know
Because I thought I researched this at one point, but it's been so long that I
because
can't
I don't know the
remember.
definition of folly. Pikeman's Folly, like Pikeman's
Well, I
foolishness
know that
is
one.
weird.
I know what.
Yeah,
the
but like
actual did.
Pikeman's
Yeah.
foolishness or a Pikeman's uselessness is weird. So I don't know. Like I don't know. Anyways,
Oh, Follies are often named after the individual who commissioned or designed the project. The connotations of silliness or madness in this definition is in accord with the general meaning of the French word folly or folie. However, another older meaning of this word is delight or favorite abode.
Okay, that would make way more sense. You just got to do a little
Yes,
bit
it
of
would.
research.
Yeah, it's just like pikeman's favorite place. So it's probably like it's a well established
it's a trade route,
like
yeah.
area that pikemen are like exceptionally built to fight
Yeah.
in,
Huh,
probably.
okay, cool.
So this last built trade route from Ormath to Hlondeth didn't just open up trade, it also brought a rise in population to Hlondeth, as a lot more people were going there to get in on this trade, but also the trade routes made it safer for people to travel. And so the population of Hlondeth actually grew until it was larger than the city that was built before it, Alaghan.
A what? One more time?
Alagho with a little like arrow above it, N.
Yep. Yeah, you pronounced it right, I guess.
Alaghan is how I'm going
Yes,
with.
I think you need
A few years
you need
later,
a little bit more accent to it, though. Let's hear it with a little bit more spice.
Alaghan.
Yeah, thank you.
There you go.
Thanks.
A few years later, a new mayor in Alaghan started a bloody civil war and ended up claiming all of the lowlands that bordered Hlondeth. But it didn't end there. The new mayor, Dempster Turmish.
Dempster Turmish.
I know. It's I caught thinking it's like
That's
dumpster.
great.
It's too close to dumpster. It's dumpster with an E instead of a
Ah,
U.
That's great.
Dempster Turmish continued his conquest and began to besiege.
He sounds
Hlondeth.
like a guy who would siege
Now-
a city.
That's true. The leader of Hlondeth at the time was a human warlord named Gestin.
Gestin?
Gestin.
Is that like their version of Gaston or
Gestin.
something?
I don't know. Gestin, being a skilled leader and with an immense knowledge of the surrounding area, knew exactly what to do. He foresaw the invaders would fail unless they got control of an area called the Churning Bay,
German.
which was along the northern shore of the land they were on, Vilhan's Reach. Gestin didn't want to lose a single citizen over this, as he believed, stupid conflict.
Does this guy gesture
So
a
he
lot?
reached out.
Because
I don't know. Oh, you're just trying to
no,
make jokes?
because his German, apparently Gestin in German is gestures.
Huh, interesting.
I don't know. Gestin maybe? Gestin? I don't know. Ooh, has a thing.
Yeah.
Gestin. Okay, anyways, continue.
So Gestin, as you were saying, didn't want to lose a single citizen over this conflict. So he reached out to the pirates of Vilhan Reach.
Yeah.
He offered the pirate captains safe harbor within the cities for aid against the army and for running supplies to and from Hlondeth. He wanted to offer this to them for multiple reasons, but on top of it all, he knew if you could make it a home for them, people will always fight harder for their own homes. This deal was taken by 60 pirate vessels.
Heck yeah.
They crashed hard against the Turmish fleet and destroyed them.
Yes. A pirate fleet, baby.
This win did lead to some pirates' deaths, but none of the Hlondeth's military faced any losses, not even its navy. This led to Turmish never being able to take the Churning Bay. Despite the siege lasting for over a month, the mayor hadn't brought any siege machines and was unable to get inside the city. And in the end, the Turmish army returned unsuccessfully to Alaghan. Gestin's success in the war saw his political power only grow, and the deal with the pirates remained, boosting the economy through legal and not so legal trade. This is when another group comes onto the scene. The Yuan-Ti family of House Extaminos.
Oh, here we go.
Now, when we were talking about House Extaminos last week, they were the leaders of the city. Not right now. House Extaminos was making a name for themselves and a fortune by quarrying the emerald-hued marble that Hlondeth was going to become known for. as many of the houses in the city and buildings were made of this stone later on, that the city was known to have this green hue. House Exterminos, while gaining this fortune, started to position itself to gain power on the political front as well. But they kept butting heads with Gestin in this attempt and were not being very successful. Over the next few years, Alalhan made 2 more attempts to take Hlondeth. The first was stopped with the aid of a powerful spellcaster and an adventuring company cutting off their supply lines and damaging their siege equipment. The second attempt was stopped while the army was still amassing its troops by someone killing the mayor who led all these attacks, Dempster Turmish.
Stupid Dempster Turmish.
The new leader, which this is where I get confused. Everything in the article referred to the first mayor as Dempster Turmish. Yep. The new leader is called Florentine Dempster. So is Dempster the first or the last name?
That is a great question.
I'm confused, but Florentine Dempster, upon ascension to power, immediately ceased hostilities and called off the attack. This is great. I love when this happens. The next 100 years go by without threat or war, causing the region to flourish and become incredibly
successful. Can't let that happen. That can't happen. That's got to end.
Dempster was the only thing holding him back, it seems.
Yep. Gosh. Good old Dempster.
Because it's not just Hlondeth that's doing well, it's Alalhan that's doing well region, right now as well. Yeah, it's
Stupid
the whole region.
Dempster was being a butthole.
Yeah.
For lack of a better term. Excuse my French.
It was... Yeah,
Big
sorry.
butthole.
I don't understand that phrase.
Butthole?
No, please excuse my French.
Okay.
Like, it doesn't make it. Yes, you're like, please excuse me.
I was really confused. I was like, you don't understand the term butthole.
Yeah, what's a butthole? No, that's not what I'm asking you, Aaron. I'm saying I just don't understand the. I want to look up the history of that.
Yeah, pardon my French. Probably some sort of racist slang or something.
Honestly, it sounds like it probably is. The next 100 years go by without threat or war, causing the region to flourish. But it was brought to a harsh end as Mount Urguth near Hlondeth erupted. For several months, the skies in the area were covered with a thick blackened cloud of ash. During these blackened months, it didn't really seem like it was because of them, but just something that was happening along the same time. The ruling family of Gestins was losing favor with not just the general populace, but also powerful religious factions were dropping their support.
All right, I found out the reason. It says that oftentimes French was used in 19th century by 19th century Englishmen.
They use the swears of French.
And so often people didn't know the language, so they would say, pardon my French, because people wouldn't understand French. That's one theory. It also appears in common literature around that time period as well. But anyways, continue.
That's interesting. But so Gestin's family that was in power was losing support pretty heavily. And House Exterminos began using its connections to get the idea of them possibly being in charge into those people, into the like powerful group's minds. Like, hey, maybe this wouldn't be so bad. As all that was going on, the foreign power of Chondath snuck their armies and navy in and seized power of Hlondeth.
Oh, gosh.
They used Hlondeth as a staging area for an attack on the kingdom of Turmish, but they weren't able to keep that a secret, and Alalhan, Turmish's capital, amassed troops in its own defense. This led to a stalemate as neither nation's army could win over the other. At this point, I've run out of time again. But there's still so many interesting events that happen to this city. Like, literally what comes next is they get attacked by a surprise kobold army.
Yeah, I want to know what the heck that is.
There's so many interesting things that still happen to this city. And Aaron and I were talking, and it was like, there's so much of the city that we're making that we want to talk about. So we might as well just do a third episode on Hlondeth.
A surprise kobold army. I didn't know that was a thing. I didn't know kobolds were that that big of a thing.
Oh, I'm 90% sure that they are not the ones leading
Yeah,
this
I was gonna
attack.
say, is this some sort of
Um,
evil guy who's captivated the minds of the Cobalt?
they're under the banner of the Tattered Cloth Legion, commanded by the Drow
Yeah.
Queen, Nath
Okay, well, all
Glaris
right.
of Undraith.
Okay. That's a good name for an army, though. Tattered Cloth Army is an interesting name.
Yeah, but we will dive into that
So, what do we want to do this week? Are we
next week.
making the history part of the history of this city? Is that kind of the idea?
Yes.
All right. I always ask you, do you have thoughts for the beginning? What we kind of want to go for? Are we starting?
Well, I think what we should start by saying, like, can you give a summary of the city that we created last
Boy,
time?
I don't even know if I can. Can you give a summary of the city we created last time?
I'm gonna give it to you. I'm gonna toss this ball your way. Woof.
Boy. Okay, so we made a city state last week that is under constant threat from the nations around it. To deal with this constant threat, the city state has created some sort of magical barrier, magical force field, I guess you could say, hindering movement in and out of the city. And we didn't get too much into that, but we got more into the reasoning behind this kind of like paranoid leader who is trying to defend his city so ravenously. And the reasoning behind that we kind of discussed was that they had created their city around or on top of or near a pillar, and they wanted to protect this pillar at all costs. Because this pillar,
Mm-hmm.
they were harvesting, I believe is what we kind of came up with. They were harvesting this pillar and selling it
Yeah.
as resource, some sort of resource, like a magical essence or a crystal that was providing this city state great wealth in the region. So we kind of discussed that the nations around it don't know that this is a pillar, like the pillars that are the
Mm-hmm.
foundations of the world in this kind of setting. Um, but only the leader of the city state knows or is at least somewhat aware of this pillar being a thing. Um, but really, they're just taking advantage of the resources and selling them for money to be rich. So that's kind of what we built last week in a very short roundabout explanation. Anything else you want to add about that?
Mm-hmm. No, I think that's pretty well
Cool.
summarized. I think the main thing is now this week we just need to create like the history of
Yeah,
it,
we're
or at least the first part of the history of it. As we'll have another episode to really focus on
yeah.
more on the city.
Yeah. Okay. So where do we want to start? What do we want to do? Do we want to go like all the way back to the founding of this city? Do we want to start that early? Is that kind of where we're thinking?
I think so. I think it's definitely where we should start.
Okay. Thoughts on the founding of the city? Do we want this to be a group of people? Do we want this to be a military outpost to start? What is our thought here? Because it's a pillar, so obviously that's a pretty important part. So do we have
Mm-hmm.
people who know about pillars, or is this just a coincidence, or is it because it's a big like hill or a mountain, so they decided to settle around or on top of this hill? Um, yeah, what's kind of our thought there? I'm thinking, man, I could see both. I could see a nation believing that this was a pillar or knowing what a pillar is, so they set a military fortification to defend it or keep it within their
Mm-hmm.
own, and then that military foundation or fortification kind of turned into
Well,
a city.
okay. Well, hold on. So what is the what before like they had gotten to the point where they are building a fortification here? What was the area like before?
I don't know.
Was it tribes, like a bunch of different tribes? Was it nobody lived here until like a group came?
Boy,
Like how do we see
there's
this?
two things that I think about. The place my brain went very first was this was like an expedition into the unknown, and they found this place for a city, or they found like crystal or whatever that's like poking out of the earth, and so they decided this would be a really good spot to start our foundations or whatever. They claimed it for their empire, claimed it for themselves, and then rebelled against their home empire. So I do like that
Mm-hmm.
kind of idea. Like an adventuring party or just an explorer with his crew could be a really fun idea. The other
Mm-hmm.
thought I had was this part of the world was settled and colonized. There were people, there were nations, and to claim this territory, a military fortification was placed to, protect or guard whatever this resource was. And then the
Yeah.
military fortification rebelled and turned into its own city, rebelled against their home nation and turned into its own city, since it was so hard to take or defeat. And they believed they could be successful rebelling, selling these rares. So maybe they sold this stuff to another nation to come help defend them and fight, and kind of led this rebellion against their mother nation. So, or we could combine both, because I guess they could both be combination, where it was an exploring group, they founded a military outpost, and then that military outpost eventually rebelled. So that was my thought. Like that or not?
I like the idea of the military group, or like the some sort of military outpost that eventually
Mm.
rebels. Um, how do you see? How do you? Okay, why are they rebelling?
Boy, I think there's probably a couple reasons. I think one, they probably see this resource as something they can take advantage of, and they don't need to send it back to their home nation, right? Like they would benefit more from it themselves than having to send it
Interesting.
back to their own nation. So,
I I was thinking more of a religious thing.
ooh, explain.
Like they sense like the power and holy energy of this pillar, and almost kind of like
Become devout to it.
we should be protecting this or something. And maybe it like goes through multiple like quote unquote rebellions, where like the first one is all about like we need to protect this thing, and then later on they have another rebellion getting away from this religious like theocracy that's like whoa, this is a resource, we need to use this.
So, like an era of rebellion and coups, where like,
Well, so I was thinking they're like far apart. So the theocracy has like a time to
mm,
establish itself and build a city and protection and stuff. And then there's a rebellion. And then I think there's like a rebellion, a third rebellion that doesn't quite work. But what it does is it establishes that like no one group in this city should have too much power. So then it kind of becomes a mixture of both the hey, let's use this as a resource, and a mixture of, hey, this is a religious thing, we need to protect it, so don't use too
hmm,
much. Like, they find a balance through three rebellions.
okay. I do like,
Or we could just have it where it's constantly in rebellion, constantly like a pendulum swinging between
yeah,
both
yeah.
factions.
I like this idea of like an era of rebellion. So this long period of time where the city rebels several different times against several different leaders and several different factions.
Mm-hmm.
I do like that. Um, I think I'm trying to decide, because I like the idea of this religious thing, but I don't see it in this city very well. Because the foundation that we have right now is they're like harvesting and selling this resource, and I see it harder to transition from a theocracy of like, worshiping this crystal to harvesting and exploiting this crystal for money, Um, at least in
Mm-hmm.
this context, I feel like I don't see that as well. I love that idea though for a different city, like a theocracy that is or a nation, a theocracy around a pillar that has kind of established itself. I do like that. Um,
Mm-hmm.
it could be interesting to do a corrupt church that's wins the wins the love of the people, but secretly is harvesting the crystal for its own power. I do love that idea.
Yeah, it's called the Great Church of Capitalism.
True, true, true. You're right. You're right. I do love that idea, as we would probably could have guessed. Because I think that would be kind of a fun little twist. But
Yeah.
ultimately, I feel like what would be the most reasonable is this group believed that this crystal is valuable in some way to us. We don't need to be sending this over to our home nation. Let's use it for ourselves. And, they started building more fortifications. They started digging in deeper to the crystal and into their defensive position. I think
Mm-hmm.
that would probably be a pretty reasonable thing. And then what I would see happening, because I mean, obviously we got to make a whole history, is we have the foundation of this city, this military outpost that a nation sends to claim the region. That region then rebels from
Mm-hmm.
them, and they call for like a mass gathering to the city as this nation now comes to destroy the city. Um, so everybody who lives within the region, within the area, kind of makes their way into this great fortification, and there is a giant siege and battle. And um, the true value, I think, of this crystal, because we have to determine what type this crystal is and what we see this crystal doing for the region, because we were talking about it being like a mountain or a hill. What does that actually,
Mm-hmm.
does it do anything for the region? Is it just
Maybe it's minerals. Maybe it's like the mines in the area become incredibly fruitful,
yeah, I mean, I also,
and maybe that's how they find it. Is that this town or city or whatever, however big it is, has mines, and eventually the mines go underneath the city, and they find like the underside of this
do we
pillar.
do we see the pillars being living entities, or are they not living entities?
I think it's a
It's a
mixture.
mixture.
I don't think they're sentient. I don't think there's like a conversation you could have with them, but I think they live and grow.
Because I do like
Yes.
the idea of this town, kind of what you were talking about, has these mines, and as they're harvesting these mines, by the time they think they depleted the mine, like parts of it have grown back, like ore and crystals have grown back into its spot, and so it kind of is like we've hit the jackpot, like we have hit you know the place of ever producing wealth, I think that could be a really interesting. And so they harvest like this living entity as it continues to grow and replace what has been mined. Could be really fun.
Mm-hmm.
Also, kind of a little bit horrible, like harvesting a living entity's. Well, I guess we do that all the time though. Harvest living entities' flesh and and skin. But doing that as it like regrows and repopulates. So I like that
Mm-hmm.
idea, and through this like mining process, this group rebels. But I want to dive into this little war a little bit because I want to. I mean, obviously, in history, we have like the American Revolution. Obviously, that's a pretty big revolution in history, at least in American history. So I mean, there's a million revolutions. The French Revolution's a really good one too. How do you see this war going down? What do you see happening? Is this?
So the war, can you? So the war is between who
So yeah, this is the
specifically?
city state has rebelled against its.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
And this is the original
yes,
military sending people to attack
yes,
them.
yeah. So how do you see this going? Because obviously, in like rebellions, in this case, when you have such a small population versus a much larger population, it's a little bit difficult to win a war.
I think the number one thing to think about right now is how important are these people? Like how important was this base to that previous nation?
Yeah, like would they spend a lot of
Yeah,
resources?
are they going to send their whole military? Or are they going to send like a few regiments and then be like, "Oh, well, shoot, we
So do you
couldn't do
think
it."
then like the do you think this rebellion kind of started with hiding secrets of how prosperous these mines were, and so they only sent partial shipments at first because it was so prosperous, and then
I just want to be sure that we're going with the route of a so successful we don't want to share this with the nation.
yeah, I feel like they would believe they're being like exploited. You know what I'm saying? Like they don't get
Oh, okay.
they don't get a
So
share.
it's more like a taxation
Yeah,
without
yeah,
representation thing than a we want to keep all these
yeah,
profits for ourselves.
yeah.
Mwahaha. It's not
Well,
capitalist.
I think
It's
it's both. I think it is both because
a
yeah,
little bit, but
I think they see the vast amount of wealth and want it for themselves, but they also don't get any
mhm.
of that wealth really. They get whatever their paycheck is, like whatever their, you know, here's your money to be in the military fortification and here's your money to, work in the mines. So I
Yeah.
think there's a little bit of both there where they want to rebel because the amount of wealth and amount of stuff that could be made here is very high, but also
Hmm.
they're away from their home nation. They start developing their own culture and their own belief systems, and that eventually also grows them apart from their home nation, and they eventually rebel. Because that's how a
Yeah.
lot of colonies and military fortifications went in history, anyways. Is they kind of started developing their own culture. They started realizing like, oh well, we're just part of a bigger scheme from our home nation. Why don't we, take matters into our own hands? We can do this better. We can run this better. We're no longer, in the American example would be, we're no longer British. We're American, right? um, we have our own ideals and our own ways of living, and so I think that's probably kind of how it would work with this. We can rule this crystal better. We can distribute its resources better. We should be able to be the direct benefactors of having such a wonder
Hmm.
in our territory.
I also think if it's mining and stuff, it's
Oh
dangerous.
yeah,
So they also want to. They're like, if we're putting ourselves in this much danger, we
yeah,
deserve
yeah,
more
yeah.
of that.
Agreed. And so I think it
Do
starts.
you think it started with a strike, or do you think it immediately went to
I think
like we need our own control
I think
revolution?
it definitely is a thing that builds up over time. I think first it starts with the city keeping some stuff for itself and not sharing the full, not sending the full, shipments over to its home country. So it starts
Hmm.
by, oh, there's so much here that we didn't actually know about. Let's not report that to our home nation, right? Let's not actually,
Hmm.
let's not tell the truth here. And eventually it starts to go into, well, we're already hiding 20% of it. Why don't we, hide more? And then it, turns into, oh, we already have our own belief systems and our own way of life, and maybe we do send this into a little bit of a religious thing, because maybe we could weave something like that in there where,
I would say let's not make it because I think I like the idea of there being a town where that's
yeah,
more the thing where it's
yeah,
focused on that. I would say having a small amount of people that are like that at least can sense, hey, this is like holy energy. Like it's not just
yeah,
magic. It's there's divine magic here. Like and there's like a small sect that's like treats it as a religious thing, but it's
yeah,
not like they're not the
yeah.
controlling
That
group.
that's just another ally that this group can obtain through, to fighting their oppressors, in quotations.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I think like if you imagine it like there's like the mayor of the town and then there's like a
yep,
council. They would be one of those
yep,
people on the council. Is this
yep,
religious
yep,
group?
yep. I agree. I like that. And so, eventually their whole world starts to develop a new culture, and they start thinking, well, we don't need to send shipments anymore. Let's use this to our benefit. Um, I even kind of like the idea of like having a unique set of weapons and armors made of like this weird crystal that they've developed to like completely set it apart from the world. And it's the only place you can get such equipment because they've like learned to forge and make things out of it. Would be really interesting if we wanted to go that route. Could be really unique. But
Mm-hmm.
anyway, so they started.
I mean, I definitely think they
Yeah. Oh
use it.
yeah. I would too. So
100.
they
percent
started building this foundation ready for rebellion, and then they full on rebel against their nation. And so then the question, like you proposed, how much does this home nation care? Do they know? Like, have they found out about these actual? You know, are there people who are loyal to the throne that have reported about the actual prosperity of these mines and the regrowing nature of some of these places? I probably think there would be, right? There's always one of those guys.
Hmm. Yeah.
So if they knew the true nature, I'm sure they would care pretty heavily about having that as a part of their empire, right?
Oh, the
Mm-hmm.
original nation. Yeah, totally. But I think I do you think that like how long does it take before they realize or do they not realize to this day what they've got?
I think they don't realize it's, a life founding pillar, but I think they realize the value in it, right? So, I think even to this day, people don't fully realize that it's a pillar of, because we don't are the pillars in the world in general aren't known too much about, right? Um,
Yeah.
very select few people know or care
Yeah.
about these. Um, so I think even to this day, it's not known too much about, but the value is unquestionably there. So um,
Mm-hmm.
I would see, I mean, in real life, European colonies. I mean, Europe threw all their resources to European colonies to fight for them in all sorts of wars. So um, I feel like this nation would definitely dump quite a bit of money into keeping this as a colony or a military outpost if they knew there was this much wealth to be made there. Um,
100%.
so then that would mean a full scale invasion, which then would mean this city has to defend itself for a full scale invasion.
Well, I thought we were saying if they knew, and they didn't know,
I think
because it was kept from them how
I
successful it was. I think if we're saying like out of a percentage of how much of their like current standing army they would send, I would say 50%.
yeah. So I am I would probably agree. That's a pretty big number regardless because if they have other colonies and other fortifications, they got soldiers all over the place. So I'm assuming that's a big number, and I think that's a pretty decent number. But um, I think this home nation knows to an extent the proliferation of this area because I think they would have people
Mm.
loyal to them that have reported about it, right? So it's been kept a secret, but that secret has been, you know, uh,
I think it takes a
I do
little
too.
bit.
Oh, I agree. I agree. I agree.
I think this like quote unquote rebellion comes goes
Oh, I think it's over generations.
before.
Yeah.
Yeah, before like I think it settles down. The nation is the city state is growing, and
Yep.
then it kind of fully comes to like, oh, they had so much more money than
Yep.
what we knew
I agree.
comes
Yep.
to fruition.
I agree.
I will ask now. I think once that ends, once that part of the history ends, how do they prevent other nations from
That
attacking
is
them?
a good question. That is a
Is are they do they start trade and start making stuff with this product early on and start like selling it, and so other people are like they make friends that
yeah.
way?
I mean, that's probably the most likely thing that happens. Like they already have shipments and things ready to go, so they immediately upon
Or do they just use the like gems or whatever the money they find in they mined in the mines that they were keeping secret? Maybe they waited to have a revolution until they had a just massive stack of it.
well that I think
So what they can do is they can hire
mm,
mercenaries to like supplement their armies for those like beginning eras of their development so that they're like a massive fighting force that's really
yeah, I think
dangerous.
I think both. I think both. I think they've stockpiled money because this is, they get a lot of resources from this. So I think they stockpile money, and I love the idea of hiring mercenaries, like this whole mercenary army, and even probably would impact the culture of the city itself. This
Yeah.
whole mercenary group and army, like that they have developed, and I think also they start bringing in aid from other nations who potentially are interested in such a resource as well in establishing trade and establishing those relations as well. So I think both probably happen,
Mm.
but I think the beginning stages of the rebellion and the revolution are the people within the city, like the military outpost, those people and all of their descendants, because I think this takes a little while, and then a massive amount of mercenaries and swords for hire, and maybe even we could throw in like a native force as well, like people native to this region if we wanted people to be settled there already, um, and
Mhm.
like this religious group who's interested in the crystal as a religious icon. So just some menagerie of interesting groups and individuals all formed together to kind of stop this invasion. I think that's
Mhm.
probably most likely, and I think that's a very interesting kind of story. How do we see this invasion going? The very first rebellion, is this successful? Is it not successful? Is this a disaster? Like, what, do they get taken over? Do they win? What are we thinking?
I think they win.
Yeah, yeah, I think so too.
I think they I think they planned it out enough. They had enough extra resources, money, things that they e- they weren't even, I don't even think they struggled. Like, I think the amount of forces against them made it hard, but like they had plenty of supplies, plenty of weapons, plenty of money to spend on other mercenaries, like if they needed to hire more people. But like, I think they took long enough to start the revolution that they had planned it, and the other for and the main, like the nation they broke off from, were not, like, didn't
Yeah,
expect it.
didn't prepare enough to defend their, their fortification. Yeah, I think so. My main concern would be food and like that kind of resource because we've got minerals and things, but if a
Well, I think what they did is either they lied about how much they were using each month, so the original nation sent them more, or they just bought it.
yeah, like just buying mass
Like
amounts of food.
they got these shipments of food to supplement what was already being provided by
Yeah,
the nation,
and storing it.
so that they had extras in
Yeah,
prep.
because the thing about defending a city state is if your city is sieged, you are you're stuck you're stuck there for a hot minute. So
Maybe they even did this. Maybe they even planned, like, they knew they were going to be sieged. They're like, we don't have the resources to keep them away from the
they make like
city.
underground trade routes.
So, well, no. What I was thinking is that they hired mercenaries ahead of time to attack from the flank, knowing that they were going to be sieged. They're like,
Oh,
hey,
playing 4D chess.
attack from behind while they're attacking the
I
city.
love the idea of like so much preparedness that they have these like hidden trade routes that they can leave the city through to bring goods in,
Mm-hmm.
and then an attack from
I'm good. Yeah,
behind.
that sounds cool
Like
too.
I
Especially because they're a
yeah,
mining city, so they would already have, like, maybe that's where they, like, actually discover the pillar. Like, they have
yeah,
mines, yes, but they actually, like, start building trade routes under the city at this
to
point,
escape it.
and they discover how deep this,
Yeah.
like,
How
structure
big
is.
and, valuable this structure actually has become. Yeah, I like that a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think, and that kind of like opens up a whole new can of worms for this place, and I think preparedness levels as they start preparing for rebellion go through the roof because they start realizing this is a whole lot bigger than we even thought. We
Yeah, we
we
underestimated how
we
important
were
this
lying
was.
to our home nation, and this is even bigger than what we were lying about. you know,
Yeah.
like, yeah, I like that a lot. And they, have these secret escape tunnels that bring in food and supplies, and they have these underground caches and all sorts of stuff of food and resources that they've built up, and probably pretty quickly too over time because this is a lot of money they're taking in. So like I think, and then this invasion force comes. How long do you think they're sieged for? What do you think that process looks like? Like, is this just a very,
I think with enough of this planning, either the trade routes underneath are so good that they just, like, can last that long, or they've planned it out enough where they hired people to flank them and, like, do planned
yeah,
attacks
raids on supply
that, like,
wagons and all sorts of stuff?
well, that, but also, like, if they ever are, like they can attack from the interior, from the city, and, like, they have planned it out that, hey, when we start this attack on, I don't know, May 6th, you guys on May 6th attack from the other side. Like, they plan it out so thoroughly that, like, it completely blindsides the
Yeah, maybe.
or they hire these mercenaries to act like they want to join
Oh, be a
the
part
city.
of the
The
army.
city, like, I'm sorry, the this
Oh
yeah,
yeah.
exactly. So they're from
Oh
within because
gosh.
they planned it out so far in
Yeah,
advance.
they pay the mercenaries a better fee to go from to start from within, march with the army. A good third of the army is mercenaries from the homeland nation,
Yeah.
and then in the night or whatever, surprise, we have a giant force that's attacking from inside, and then everybody rushes out from the city as well, and just in one fell
Yeah.
swoop, kind of just decimates this poor army. Be
Yes.
very, very interesting. I like that. I like the attack from within, where these mercenaries are actually hired by the city state to attack and kill the army they're a part of. Very interesting. That would be very, very, very fun. And I think that's a pretty real, maybe not realistic, but realistic enough to, sorry, we got paid more, sorry. And maybe even they came to these mercenary groups of like, well, listen, you're going to get paid twice. You're going to get paid by the home front nation.
Yep.
And you're going to get paid by us.
That's exactly what I was thinking.
You're going to get double the money. So, and you're going to lose hardly anybody because this is going to be a complete surprise. You're going to attack in the middle of the night, and nobody is going to be the wiser because this our mother nation does not expect us to do this at all. So it'd be like a triple win scenario because most of the time mercenary companies lost a lot of casualties. They are, pretty. If we don't have to lose our members of our own army, we're gonna not lose members of our own army. So yeah, I like that a lot. Anything else we kind of want to add about the little first rebellion?
No, I kind of love this.
I do
right
too.
now.
I'm really enjoying it actually.
This is I like I'm starting to like this place even more than I already
and I think, next week we start diving into other periods of rebellion because you're going to talk about the invasion, I'm assuming, a little bit at the very least of this other city, the Cobalt place. No,
there's a big amount on that, and it has lasting effects on how the city permanently changes based on being attacked by these kobolds. Not just from, the ruling family almost being blamed because, how could you let this happen? How did you not know? Type things.
Yeah, and I think we can dive into that, too, next week, the longer ramifications of this war and the next war to come and how they kind of avoid wars going in the future as best as they can. I think that's a really good place to start next week, too. So, cool.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is good. I really enjoy this. Well, thank you all for listening to episode 110 of Dungeoneered. If you'd like to write to us, you can write to us at dungeoneered@gmail.com. You can write to us about ideas for topics, lukewarm opens, recipes that you have. We'd love to hear it all. If you have any favorite topics in the Gears of War franchise, as we're looking into that, I guess now, write to us. Let us know what topics we should talk about. If there's any interesting events, Emergence Day or whatever, But all in all, thank you for listening. If you listen to us on any apps that have ratings and reviews, it really helps the show. If you write a review, let people know what they're getting into, but also show to the app that, hey, people are listening and engaging with this podcast, and you should promote it a little more.
Heck yeah.
But we appreciate you for listening, and as I always say, always remember to be the sharpest barrel in the bunch.
I'm just going to beat you to it. Bye!
See you next time.